Hello, you fucks. Welcome to John Solo's Beard Brigade. I'm John Solo, fresh back from vacation, and you are not. No, really, you're not. If somebody told you you're John Solo, don't believe them. They're liars. Anyways, first off, I have to start the show with an apology today. I was supposed to be live last Thursday doing a Ramblin' Gremlin episode at 11 a.m. in our Facebook group. We've only been doing it that way for a couple weeks. I had a dentist appointment the day before, and so it wasn't even that bad. My dentist is fantastic. I was sore, and I don't like pain. It hurts, but I was still I would have been able to do it. I would have been able to even talk a little bit, but I didn't set my alarm. Like, I don't know why I completely fucking gapped it. I don't know. It's on my calendar, but I just didn't. So I woke up at 12:30 to a message from little Alyssa Gramlin saying, "Hi," because she sounds like that. She said, "Hey, where are you?" And I explained, and then she was so nice and so kind. She's like, "We can still do it now if you want." And I explained to her, I'm naked, I'm in pain, and I'm in bed, so it's not going to happen right now. I mean, but so we're going to do a double episode this coming Thursday. I will set my alarm. I've also got Trace on it too. Trace, even she has my phone number. She can fucking call me if she has to. But one way or the other, we're going to be on the air this Thursday for Ramblin' Gremlin, and I'm so sorry. Past that, yeah. I just got back from vacation. I had my dental appointment on Wednesday after the sessions, and I don't even know if we did sessions on Wednesday. But regardless, I got 5 cavities filled, and it was amazing. They did a great job. And then Thursday, I didn't do a damn thing. And then Friday, Jody and I took the dogs, the girls, on vacation. We went up to Lake Erie. We spent a day kind of driving down the coastline. Then we had a campsite. There's a whole other story there. Don't go to campgrounds. They suck ass. There were children there. Then we went from the campground and we stayed at, y'all might remember, I think her name is publicly known at this point, Denise Brown. It was Kenneth Obie's. She is Kenneth Obie's widow. We stayed the night at her place, and we camped out in her backyard, and we got to visit with her dogs, and our dogs had a wonderful time jumping in the pond. Thank you so much, Denise. We had a great time. And then we came home on Sunday. It was awesome. But today I got I was telling our guest off the air, I have like a vacation hangover. I did everything right this morning, and I'm just a little not quite in the groove yet. We'll get there though. Tracy just reminded me that I still did not put Casey Wells on the ticker. Casey Wells is coming in. I don't know the date. I could look and see, but I don't. But Casey Wells is also going to be on the show here shortly, sometime. We'll make sure she gets on the ticker next week or Thursday. I don't know. I'm not. How are you? Is everything all right over there? So past that, August 19th, Casey Wells is coming in on August 19th. Past that, we haven't got much going on this week. We're working on Vet Shop Boys Book 5 from Casey Cox, not to be confused with Cox. Wait, that is to be confused with Cox. That's his fucking name. Cox. I said it again. Cox. Can you say that on YouTube? I just did. Cox. So, we're working on Vet Shop Boys number 5. This one's got me something or other. Got me fucked with a big dick. I'm not sure. But it's hilarious. We got the first few chapters done this morning. We'll have a story time up here in the course of the next couple days. 29th, Tracy says. She had a typo. See, she's the one in charge, too. Casey Wells is with us on the 29th. So, working on that this week. This weekend I have gigs all weekend out at Buckeye Lake. So we'll be out Friday afternoon through Sunday. Then we'll be back on Monday again. So that's what we got going on there. The guests that we have on this week, we had this guest on at GRL last year, and she was a ton of fun. Actually, I'd met her just prior to that and really talked. I'd seen her from afar. She's been in the industry for a while, but we actually met down in the hotel lobby, and somehow it came about that here's what I did too. Here was my move. I said, you want to come up to my hotel room and talk to me just for a little bit? I've got a video camera. She didn't get scared, so it worked out. But without any more from me, I give you Drea Roman. Hello, Drea. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm laughing at that version of the story.
Look, I didn't. Have you ever seen Quantum Leap? Have you ever seen that show with
Yes,
Scott
I loved
Bakula?
Quantum Leap.
Me too. It was
Mhm.
great. And you remember the Swiss cheese memory? That's me. That's
Mhm.
do it. That's it describes me perfectly. So, how's your world? You were telling me that you are working on. You can't quite do it yet, but you're working on becoming a full-time author thing. You got that?
Yes, I like my students. Actually, probably I teach mostly at the college level. I've done a couple of times high school, middle school, and I don't ever want to do that again. And the way not to ever do that again is to never ever apply when you see those come up on LinkedIn or whatever. Like so I'm not allowed to do that no matter what job or anything I have lined up, because my
That makes sense.
tendency is you have to have a job. Period. You have to have some sort of money coming in. Anyway, I'm tired of teaching, even though I especially like the ethnic studies stuff I teach. I don't want to be in charge of them anymore. I don't want to have to grade their papers and hold their hands and bring them along and be like, "No, no, that's not what you're supposed to do." Which frequently, but I'm pretty nice at giving that information out, so.
Well, we touched on this a little bit when you were on the show last time, but I'm going to touch on it again just to see if your
Mhm.
experience has changed in the last year here. College kids today aren't what they used to be, are they? They're, from my
No.
impression, and now I have family that's in the high school level of teaching, and they're saying the same thing that, you know, these kids just I think the one of the issues is that we're teaching to tests now. We're not teaching somebody
Mhm.
how to actually learn, and that's what you get. You get people
Yeah.
that aren't very good at problem solving and taking it on themselves. So that's your experience in college now as well?
Yes, and, I'm friends with some of my high school teachers on Facebook, and, they retired before all of this happened, so they're like, "Oh, it's just like that," and I'm like, "No," because it started with No Child Left Behind in the early 2000s, and the idea behind it was good, but unfortunately, it caused too much testing, teachers teaching to the test, and unfortunately, over time, well, just like, you know, trust in our government. Culturally speaking, we've dropped all this trust in teachers and we don't trust them. We treat teachers like children, not like they're professionals.
Mm.
Um, you know, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So like I was getting my master's degree at Ohio State. You mentioned Buckeye Lake. Are you in Ohio?
Columbus, just north of it. Yeah, I'm very
Yes, I
familiar.
lived in Columbus for 3 years,
Hmm.
and the students I had there were freaking fantastic. But Ohio State is like a highly rated school. Come
Mm.
here, kitty. If you're gonna jump up anywhere, come up, hit me here. My cat's like trying to jump up behind my computer. Um, anyway, I had fabulous students. Like one day I was explaining something. I don't even remember what I was explaining. Oh, it was the allegory of Plato's cave. This is freshman composition, first semester. I was teaching the allegory of Plato's cave to these students, philosophical idea, and like the football student was like, "Oh, this is like the ghetto." And he explained to the whole classroom like how the ghetto was like the Plato's cave. His background wasn't that. He was much more upper class as one would be to go to Ohio State, but
Mm.
um really fantastic students. And then because I've been teaching at community college, and where I teach is where all of the rich people in California send their children. They accept like 70 something percent of the people who apply here. Anyway,
Hmm.
I'm teaching a lot more how to write a sentence and how to write a paragraph. I'm not really teaching like the higher levels of argument, which is where I started teaching. And then slowly I've had to go down. And I don't dislike that, but I just feel sorry for them because I feel like the whole system has failed them, and then their parents and culture has taught them that teachers are useless.
Hmm.
So they aren't willing to pay attention and do stuff. So
It's a rough
a lot of issues.
situation for you to be in too. I mean, you're
Mm,
brilliant. You have a PH fucking D. That's
mm.
I didn't finish 10th grade. I mean, you are a very educated woman. And I would imagine that the level of frustration probably goes up as the semester goes on, and the point where pretty soon you have these little visions in your head. You probably maybe it comes out in your stories. I don't. Have you ever had one of your characters stab the other one in the eye with a pen? Has that happened in your? um,
No, I don't tend to write violent. I tend to write more lovey-dovey. So,
yeah.
although the book I'm working on right now has a murder mystery at the center of it, maybe someone could be stabbed in the eye with a pencil.
Yeah, that could happen. Number
Maybe.
two pencil. Number two. Don't use anything else. They,
Number 2, not a number
yeah.
4.
No, fuck that. No, that's way too. I don't
Do
even think that
we do we
if
even ever see any other numbers?
we. Sorry, I didn't. I thought I muted myself. When I was a child, we used to see like the number four and number five. I don't even know what the numbers were, but they were big old fat pencils. They were like fucking
Oh,
huge.
yeah, like the art ones and the ones for kindergartners.
Yeah, those were
Ah, okay.
awesome. I remember those. You
So
remember
that's what
making?
it refers to, the
Well,
size.
it was also the jump. You size matters here. You would make the jump down to the smaller pencil size, and also with that came the jump from the wide rule paper to the college rule paper, and you felt like you were sophisticated. Now you got the college rule paper going on. That excited me. I remember. Nowadays, I
Mm,
don't even I don't even use lines now. I just use OneNote.
mm.
There's no fucking lines on there. I'm like, where we're going, we don't need lines. I'm excited for you though that you're slowly making the transition and you are doing it in a very responsible fashion where you're going to get another day job and you're going to work your way through it. And there's this jumping off point though that I'm sure you've talked
Mhm.
to other authors and this happens with narrators too. There's this point where you can't be a full-time author until you're a full-time author. There's
Right.
you can't. So at some point, and there's never a safe time. But you
No.
get back for a
And
few
that goes
months.
against my nature
You
too,
see,
because I'm like, "You have to have a job." You know?
I've watched more than one person do it at this point, and obviously I had to do
Mhm.
it myself. I told you don't do it like I did. That's a little messy, but that's my insanity. I don't do anything
Mm.
half-assed. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be 120 fucking percent balls to the walls. We're gone. That's the way I operate. Wait, Susan Buttons just said the numbers for pencils refers to the hardness of the lead.
That
What?
makes sense.
What?
There must be a scale somewhere. Like, this is 1, this is 2.
I re-
How did we end up with 2?
I don't know. It matches the same number as the most popular head for a screwdriver. That's a number two. That's the one that almost
Hmm.
everybody has. You get to number one, and it's like computer screw size, and then the number three is like big old fat. You don't even know why you got it, but the number two is the one you always use. Maybe that's like number 42. It's the answer to the fucking universe. Now we know.
Probably.
So what are you working on right now? What are you writing?
I'm working on Protecting Him, which is the 3rd book in my very first series, which is Contemporary Hurt Comfort, which is actually not what I'm known for. I'm actually known for Omegaverse and Impreg, because I started writing with Vale Valley, and then I have my own Omega's Verse series that has aquatic shifters and um, is set in Seattle, so Puget Sound and the ocean and that kind of stuff. But Protecting Him is about a cop. So the books are related. You could read them as standalones, but this book will be better informed if people read book 1 and book 2, but especially book 2. Would you come here rather than behind my computer?
You might as well
He's
just do it. Might as well. There you
he's a
go.
monster-sized kitty. Hello.
Wow. Look at
Hello.
that
My name is
big
Tibbert. Look
black
look at look at
cat.
these claws. He has polydactylism, so he has the extra claw there, so it looks like he's wearing mittens. He was very offended
Polydactylism?
that I just showed
That's,
that.
well, I mean, he's very shy, obviously, on camera. Plus, witness protection program being what it is. How long have you had that cat?
You're 8, right? He turned 8 last month.
Oh my God. It's gorgeous. And normally I would,
Yeah, he's
look,
he's a
there's,
very sweet cat too.
I have to explain to the crowd too. There's low hanging fruit here, and I'm not going to take it this time. All right, this is a very intelligent guest. I'm not going to mention black pussy or anything like that. That's a very gorgeous cat, though, by the way.
Mhm.
The book that you're working on is a mystery. Have you done any research for that? What kind of intensive like watching CSI? What do you do to make this work?
You know what? I grew up on all those kinds of shows, those police procedurals, those and Law and Order and all that kind of stuff. But I was thinking about my writing, and I don't tend to follow like the romance beats, mostly because I get irritated by them because to me they're formulaic, and some people use them and they're able to recreate them. I think of, and this is because I've been a literature teacher, I think of just like the classic. You're starting in the beginning, a bit of exposition, and you have your inciting incident, and then you have your, rising action, which has your various levels of conflict that are eventually going to lead to like the big conflict, which is the climax, and then you have like the falling action and everything working out. So that's the way I think of my stories. I don't think of them in like terms of romance beats, like, oh, three-fourths of the way through people should break up. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but I'm not going to force that, because I've heard authors say that they regretted later doing that. And I started reading romance at 13 or 14 years old. I've read a lot of romance, and so I want my stories to be a bit more organic
Mhm.
than that. And if that means I'm more niche, that's okay, you
Well,
know?
you can still one of the big things about romance also is a trope. So you can still work a
Oh,
trope and
yeah,
not hit
definitely.
beats. It's
Yeah.
it we were
Yeah, because I have this is cop witness, which is one, and then, age gap. The cop witness falls under a close proximity to, age gap, definitely hurt, comfort, overcoming emotional issues from the past, with the added element of people trying to kill you.
and you're using a lot of external conflict here as well, which is freaking
Hmm,
fantastic. I was talking to a guest about this a week or two back, and I prefer, as a narrator, I prefer some external conflict. It helps my job substantially, and it gives me something to play
mhm,
with and toy with. That being said, the vast majority of romance books typically do not deal a lot in external conflict. It just doesn't fucking happen. The conflict is internal entirely. Um,
emotional, yeah.
precisely, and the faux breakup, I've seen that done really well, and I've seen it done
So
with
have I.
yeah, I've seen it like you pin the tail on the donkey, but I mean, I've seen it done very, very predictably poorly as well. And it does feel absolutely forced. I love the fact that you're doing it organically. Um, have you? This is kind of a personal question, but has it affected your sales? Do you see less sales because you're not following the normal trend line of what most of these authors are doing?
I would be doing better if I were more consistently advertising. Also, I just feel like that my journey is it's been a bit up and down. It's very interesting because my writing career coincided with some of the most difficult years of my adult life. Just a lot of really serious things happening with my health, with career, just personal stuff. And I'm just so glad that I started writing when I did. Because you were saying I'd been in the industry a while. Actually, not really that long. My first book came out at the end of 2018.
Well,
Um,
that's
but I
4 years.
started as a reader about a year. Yeah,
Mhm.
I guess because I've been teaching so long, I'm like, still baby."
Well, when you
I
consider, I
guess
mean,
maybe once I hit 10 years old, I'll throw
dude,
away.
you're an Impreg writer, and I'm sorry,
Mhm.
shifter. I'm assuming Impreg is involved in your Omegaverse stuff. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Impreg has only really been around in popularity for 10 years now, 12 years, something like that. So
Yeah.
really, 4 years is that's a pretty substantial career. I mean,
Mhm,
if you look at it that way, so you're doing just fine. It's interesting that you're saying that the writing came along with a lot of hard things that were happening for you. Are these
mhm.
was this a time where you needed to stay home from work, that sort of thing? You said a health issue where you had some time to sit down and you just needed to take out your frustrations, and that's how you started?
Um, no. I've always had to, like, manage to have full-time work at the same time. Just a lot of things that were fairly emotional, going on, not exactly appropriate for, this podcast, though I would be willing to talk to you personally about it.
No, 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 I get it
Um,
entirely. The emotional context of it is what I'm looking for. I don't really need the specific details, but the fact that you were pouring your emotions into an outlet that was not
yeah.
your regular work, was a creative endeavor. Did you intend to publish when you started this?
Oh, yeah, because I was already tired of teaching. Like in 2013, 2014, I actually went to a conference in Phoenix. This conference doesn't exist anymore. And I was only around for about like 4 years. It was called Building the Dream, and it was for romance writers. And I went to that. And then a couple of years later, I'm in Tucson, and there's a huge book festival called Festival of Books. Thousands and thousands of people come to it. Like really, a lot of people come to it. Like close to 100,000 over 4 days, something like that.
Holy shit.
Anyway, it's huge. And I went to self-publishing thing, and I decided that I wanted to do romance, and I tried, and I still have this story tucked away somewhere. And it was actually about a female judge and her bailiff, and I just couldn't get it to work right. But then by then I'd already been consuming romance, and I was like, okay, well, I'll go that way. And then I've just been able to do that. And then I started reading Impreg, which I was leery of, which is true of most people who like, oh, whoa, Impreg, what does that mean? But then once you get into it, you see the ways in which people can use it. It can be very formulaic, but it also can be working through like gender issues, all sorts of stuff that people don't expect from from that genre. Oh, it's just about like men popping out babies. Like it can be about a whole hell of a lot more than that. Like Letta
Hmm.
Blake has a couple of series that are most definitely serious gender, sexuality, identity issues that she's working through Omega Verse
Hmm.
and Impreg. And so my first two books are in this contemporary series, Loving Him and Saving Him. And those are definitely emotional conflict, but Saving Him has some outside conflict. And you see David, you don't really meet him in the first book. That's my detective, but he's heavily involved in the second book. And then this third book is his book. Where he meets a witness who really helps him overcome a lot of his emotional issues, but then also they have to, keep from getting killed by the bad guys. that
I
that external conflict.
Well, I got to reiterate again that I absolutely love that you're doing something different and going outside of the box. That's fantastic, and you
Mhm,
don't see it enough. I well, let's go back to Impreg for a second.
mhm.
Kellix is another. Not sure if you're familiar with that author or not, but another one that
Yes,
really
I am.
explores, yeah, that gets well beyond the formulaic aspects. Angatrin Bird, they were doing that for quite a bit
Mhm,
too, especially in some more than others, but where they were really hitting on some pretty deep topics that were involved in um, the power dynamic between these two style characters, and they were also able to explore the, I guess in a way it would be considered the even though they're not females, but the female struggle for equality. And that is
mhm.
certainly something, a topic that's been explored in Impreg a great deal. It's a fantastic venue for that, while still being able to create. I don't know if you've experienced this in male female romance very much, but oftentimes the female does not seem equal to the male in many of the male
Oh
female
yeah.
romances that I've read. It's kind of, Denise and I were talking about this last week, and it's kind of rapey in a way sometimes. It's
Still, unfortunately,
yeah,
still.
yeah.
You're like,
Um,
what year is it? And we're still this rapey.
Yeah, whereas in male-male romance, immediately you get a what is perceived as much more
Mhm.
equal power dynamic right out of the gate, and there's not that expectation of oh, I don't want it, but I do. Take off my skirt and do me, and then maybe choke me a little while you're and come all over my. So yeah, we don't get that as much. Then when you add the impreg into it as well, you really get to explore some of those equality issues, which
Mhm.
is a really interesting topic, and it's something that you can get really deep into. Do you do that in your books? Is that something that you've explored? Is it something you want
Well,
to?
in the first book, I'm after the cop book, what I'm working on next is in my Impreg series. That series is called the contemporary series is called Hearts Intertwined. The second series, the Omegaverse series, is called Waves of Fate, and that's because I have aquatic shifters. And honestly, I can't remember the reader who suggested that. I really wish that I did, so I could give her credit. Um, anyway, in the first book, it is a Silky, which is a magical seal shifter, and Silky lore is that they take their coat with them in either form, either on them as a seal or as they carry it. But it's really important. It's part of them. It's connected. And there was this meme going around that was like, "Oops, you dropped your coat," and like giving it back to the Silky, and then the Silky showing up and being like, "Oh, we're mated now." Well, I took that idea and he drops his coat at the beginning and someone picks it up. That isn't what's causing them to be mated. He's of course very grateful, but this turns out to be his mate. And they're aquatic shifters, so I went with sound. Because I know sound is really important with a lot of aquatic animals. So
Mhm.
as soon as he hears his voice, he knows that he's his mate. But the human Omega didn't find out he was an Omega, and human Omegas aren't common in my series, and some humans don't like them. They think it's like just the same way in which humans now act toward trans people. There's kind of a bit of that, not as heavy, but there's some, stigma toward having uh, finding out that you're an Omega, which usually doesn't happen until you're a teenager, and all those hormones and things change like that.
Mhm.
Um, so the struggle isn't like that level of heavy, um, but he thought that he accepted that. He thought that he understood himself, but then now he's confronted with someone saying, "Hey, you're my mate. Let's get to know each other." And he's like, "Oh shit." So he has to come to terms with his own, like, I'm a man who can have a baby, and I already knew I was gay, but like this is like an extra element here, you know. So
Yeah, I would not be taking advantage of that myself. I can't. I don't know. Children are very loud. They're and very expensive, and
yeah.
then they break your shit. And how do you feel about the fated mate aspect of the mate thing? And how are you writing that into the
Well,
series?
I was someone called it a slow burn fated mates, and I really liked that. Like for the human character, he's not 100% on board for a while. He has to work out his own shit before he's on board. And then the alpha has his own issues because he's not like super macho alpha. He's kind of goofy. Um, and just he's definitely his own person. He's like not a super macho alpha.
Hmm.
He's a little confused about himself too. So and then the second series, I set up the alpha's best friend and former lover with the best friend of the human omega, who's also a human omega. But he has his own. That guy's name is Henri, and he has his own like issues that he's going to have to work through, and that his alpha is going to have to
Well, yeah,
kind of help him with.
having a name like Henri would be pretty tough to work through. Sorry, that's an inside
Well,
joke.
he's French.
Yeah, there's this
He's
inside.
French.
Did I ever tell you about this one? So, it's worth taking
Maybe
it
I don't
aside.
recall.
It's worth taking it aside for. One of my good friends, Susie Hawk, who also has written these types of
Mhm.
books. She emails
First
me or
Impreg
calls
author
me.
that I read.
Really? Well, and she's fantastic. Now, I had a little. I had a, I you some people like to have like a spoonful, some people like to have a plate. I had, I don't know, about a truckload of fucking Susie Hawk all at once. I produced about 75 of Susie's books over the course of a year. I
Wow.
didn't narrate all of them. Some of my other guys
I
that
know because
used to
Drew
work for me.
Bacher had narrated. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're familiar. So at that point, I had had enough of Susie. I love her to death, but I was like, I'm
No
fucking
more.
done here, baby. But we still remain good friends, and I'm supposed to be working on one of her projects next month. So, anyways, she calls me or emails me. I forget how it went down one day. Swiss cheese memory, and she says, "Hey, do you mind if I put you in a book?" And I said, "Yeah, what the fuck ever." And you got to be careful what you say to authors and agree to. So,
I
next thing
know.
I know,
I've
yeah.
read the
So
book.
there you go. So you know. So in a book prior to that, she had this character named Henri. Well, I'm a fucking idiot
Mhm.
from Ohio, hick, right? And I didn't know that Henri was pronounced Henri. I thought it was fucking Henry. And I went through the first, I don't know, all the book, close to it, recorded the entire damn thing with Henri being this major side character in it. And I said Henry the entire goddamn time until my wife, who gets into editing the book, explains to me as I'm almost done with it, hey, idiot, you're saying that wrong. It's not Henry, it's Henri. So I had to go do, and you have to know how the recording process works, but I had to do pickup lines for about 120 instances of fucking Henri. So I
Mhm.
came, and
And
I'm
he's
not very,
not in that book that much.
no, not that much,
He's
but
just
he
like a
sure, yeah, he sure as fuck showed up at my door in the book that she wrote him into for me, and then I had to fuck him. But yeah, that was a whole other. So she put Henri in that book specifically to piss me off because I hated. I'm not very fond of French to begin with, and then you put
Mhm.
Henri, and yeah, I just have a hatred of it. But anyways, there's my backstory for Henri. It's got to be hard working through it, anyways. But there I go. Yeah,
I didn't know that you already hated Henri. And I mean, he's not the most likable of characters anyway. He's a
well,
little homewrecker, is
yeah.
what he is.
Uh,
So
Fucking French with a name like Henri. Yeah, you can't be pleasant. Sorry, I went off on a tangent
My
there, though.
Mine Henri is very sweet once you get to know him. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm working on, and I just approved the cover for that. That one's called The Silky's Mate,
Mhm,
and that's book 2 in that series. So, those will be my 8th and ninth books, and I'm finishing those this year. And then I have like a surprise thing that I'm doing with a couple of other authors later in the year. But I have to get my ass in gear to finish protecting him. David's been running around my mind for David came to me before I finished the first book, but I think that I had to work through a lot of things before I could deal with what David needs to work through.
mhm.
It's very interesting how that affects it because I've repeatedly tried to pick this book up again, and now I'm finally in a space where I can do that. It sat at 30,000 words for a very long time. Um, I tend to write anywhere from this one will probably be 80 to 100,000, I think, in the end. So I have a lot of it figured out. There's some messy middle stuff that I don't have figured out, and I don't actually I know something about the very end. Sometimes I know the end at the very beginning of the book, but it just depends. Each story is different, and the point at which the story comes to me could be any point. And so I tend to write in chunks, and I will, narrate things on my phone. I just started using my Dragon Naturally Speaking that my fiance bought me like 3 years ago.
Mhm,
Um, so I this works really well for that too.
mhm,
Um, Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Oh, the parts of the story come to me as they come to me. Then I hit that critical point where I have to print things out and then I start putting it in and I'm like, what am I missing? How do I get from this scene here to this scene to this ending? And so that's the way in which that I put it together. I very rarely write straight through, and I know some people have to. Like the very last book I published was called The Fires of Daytime, and that was Impreg, and it was in the new series that spun off of Vale Valley, which is Gia Reeves and to a large extent Elizabeth Silver. She's her right hand person. Um,
mhm.
that shared magical impreg stuff. That one I wrote pretty much straight through, but I knew what was coming. Like I knew the major like points, but I don't usually just sit down and start with the beginning, whatever.
Well, and you're not following a lot of the traditional beats. You're letting it grow organically, and
Mhm,
for that, I would think that trusting the muse is much more involved.
mhm,
We've talked a lot on this show about different ways to treat the muse, and some people, myself included, I have a great respect for the muse, and I see it almost as a spiritual higher power to a point.
mhm.
My job every day is to show up, and as a narrator, I can do this because the material is already there. I show up every day and I do my fucking job, and sometimes the muse shows up. Other times, that bastard stays away for days at a time. But I typically still have to push through, and I show up, I do my job, I practice my craft, I get down all the technical details as best as I possibly can, and hopefully the magic shows. But I don't create like an author does. And as an author, sometimes, dude, if it ain't there, it ain't there. And pushing through another 2,000 words doesn't help. And sometimes you just have to wait. Now,
Right.
other authors that I've talked to, though, sometimes will work multiple projects at the same time, which is harder with a day job, but they will have 3 to 4 to 5 going on at the same time, or maybe even just one or two. So
Because
they
I
can, if,
kind of have that going on
yeah,
with these two.
that's a way to work because then you can bounce to another. If David isn't
Mhm.
speaking to you today, you can bounce over to another. Are you able to do that?
Sometimes it just depends on what is appearing in my head. So I might be figuring out something with Henri and Winston, and there's someone causing trouble for them. This one actually has more outside conflict than the previous one. You just actually made me realize that my writing style is actually influenced by the fact that I was a theater major as an undergrad. And so one thing you're talking about is how that like, people who are on Broadway, they can have that one night that's just fucking fantastic where they embody the character and it's the best performance they've ever given. But they have to do the work in order to get there. And then the next night, they're still going to have a good night because they had the work. That like inspiration might not show up and it might be a little bit different, but like
Mhm.
they're doing the work and they're showing up. And so I'm trying to make that habit for myself for writing.
Mhm.
It's hard.
It it's not the easiest for me as an actor, it's not the easiest transition to make. I came from being a musician. Some of the things were very applicable. I was also a vocalist, but also guitar and piano were my main instruments.
Mhm,
So with those, it helped me realize in acting that my job is to get down the technical details to the best of my ability, to get down the tech, to know how my computer works, to know how
mhm,
my voice works, to know what voices I can make, to know how to say the words. All the technical details that I can get, I need to perfect. That's my job. And if I do all of that, occasionally there is a magic spark that happens. And I mean,
mhm,
it's things I call it losing time, but there's a lot of different words out there for it. You've done this as a writer, I'm sure, where you
mhm,
get into a scene and you look up and there's an hour that's passed and it's felt like
mhm.
5 minutes. You've lost that time. You were in the moment entirely. That's the feeling that I live for. That is my heroine at this point in life. It's just
Mhm.
it's there's nothing better. And you're not in control of it. You can't turn it on or off.
No, and, you just have to do the work to, make it happen, and so I'm working on that, making sure that I'm doing something. I want to be writing every single day, um, but my compromise with this is that I have to do something author related every single day. So it might not be writing, which would be my preference, but it needs to be something. Like
Mhm,
one day, like I approved a new cover, and that was the writing thing that I managed to do that day because I had too much grading or class planning or something like that. And then
mhm,
so this is a major author thing. And then, later I'm going to try to, um, I have a scene that's handwritten and I would like to type that up and put that in. So
yeah.
that'll be my second thing for the day.
Or speaking of author things, are you coming out to GRL this year again?
I don't know. It really depends. I have an appointment with someone to look at my resume, to be changing that from a CV to a resume. Thinking about what kind of work that I would like to have. I would like to have something more remote. How do I transfer my skills as a teacher and including skills related to writing into something else that I won't be so stressed about repeatedly doing?
Mhm. Well, there's a world that is built up around academia as well that you've been in for quite a long time, and exiting that world,
And I'm
that's
tired of it.
well, I'm sure it's very political. But moving, it's almost like moving countries. That's a big exit to make. I've seen people do it, and I've seen people do it successfully, and I've seen people do it and then jump right back in. This is a horrible analogy, but I'm gonna make it anyways. It's kind of like, because I always say the thing I'm not supposed to say, that's kind of my thing. But, it's kinda like exiting a guy exits prison after 20 years, and then they do a crime again so they can get back in. It's kind of the same kind of exit thing. Some people do it successfully, some don't.
I know I actually love that analogy. I'm in The Professor is Out, which is the most famous, like, well-known outside of academia. Um, and, transitioning teachers, get out of teaching. I mean, all of these different groups in Facebook that are ultimately support groups and people talking to each other about that. They would love that analogy.
It's I can't
They
believe
would
there
love that.
I never thought about it. There are Facebook groups about teachers getting out of wow.
Full of thousands, thousands, thousands. Oh, the US is already fucked in terms of, workforce for teaching. It's about to get a lot worse.
Yeah.
People are leaving in droves, and it's not just, like, newer teachers or things like that. People are leaving colleges from tenure, from these positions that they worked 20, 30 years to get, and they're just like, "You know what? This is toxic, fuck it." And people are leaving, at the primary and secondary levels, people who've only done this a year all the way up to people 3 years from entire retirement going, I'm done." So,
Wow. Well, it couldn't happen to a nicer person, and I hope you pull it off. Um,
I'm
we've,
working
uh,
on it.
we've done our 45 minutes, and you've been great. You're always welcome here. Please come back, and you don't have to have
Oh, I
anything to
will.
promote. Just show. I hope you make it to GRL. It'd be great to see you there again. But if not, we'll all. I will have a shot of water for you as well too. 'Cause
You know what? I don't drink at those things either because I have chronic migraines, and I'm just like, it tends to mess with me, so I just all of my friends at the bar are all drinking, and I'm just having a Coke with, grenadine.
Well, this year
Just the cherry flavoring.
my wife and my best friend are coming with me this year, so it's they will do the drinking for me, and it'll be I'm sure there'll be
Yes.
no slowing them down. It'll be awesome. But now's the easiest part. All you got to do is wave, have fun, and we will see you all next week.
Bye, see you later.